So let's get to it. Placemaking, which is a term when we're building the program, it sort of got caught in our minds. And I've started to like it more and more, but I think maybe we start with just explaining a little bit about each of your unique approaches to placemaking. Juan, maybe we start with you. Lake Nona, some of the people in the room have been there, but what exactly makes Lake Nona special in your approach?
Lake Nona is a 17 square mile development next to the Orlando International Airport. Manhattan's 22 square miles, to give people like a sense of what it is. And it's something that's been, what is it that they say, that it takes years for immediate success kind of situation. I think we've reached a tipping point where you have an environment where people can play, where people can work, which is a great place to start a business, a great place to continue a business. And we are a little bit different from a development perspective because we are owner-operators, right? We're not the traditional developer that is developing, selling, and then moving on to the next parcel. We are actually thinking of being there for the foreseeable future. And I think that's part of why Lake Nona feels different, because we as Tavistock are there not just to design, plan, and build, but to live. And that changes things considerably, because now you have to live with your mistakes and make sure that what you do is something that you would enjoy for years to come, and that it's resilient and that you're able to change. So I think that's at the core what makes our community different. A great place to live where the people that are building it are actually part of the community.
Let's move to another great place to live, Kiowa. First of all, explain a little bit all the locals know what Kiowa is, but people that flew in out of town, explain sort of Kiowa, the mindset, and really the origin of it, particularly sort of the environmental theme.
Well, Kiowa is about 25 miles that way. So
I saw you checking your compass, and I was like, why is he checking his compass?
So when you run out of, which you would never do, when you run out of things you want to do in Charleston, I urge you at some time in your life to head that way. The basic statistics are this: 10,000 acres. It's a classic coastal barrier island, which is very unique to the area from Jacksonville to the North Carolina boundary. 10 miles long, 10,000 acres. For those of you that are familiar or have flown into the airport, if you laid Kiowa on the peninsula of Charleston with the wet eastern tip at the very promontory of the peninsula, it would go beyond the airport. It is a huge American landscape. And I'm here representing hundreds of people, hundreds, if not thousands of people that have been involved in a very, very much of a team approach to creating a community within a unique natural environment. And the challenges there, I feel like I'm at the wrong end of the pool on this conversation when I see the word urban on our category. So I'm going to replace that with community. How about that? Because I'm part of a group of people that believe in placemaking. We all use the term creating a sense of place, but our roots are revealing the place that exists. And that's all about designing with nature. And I can share at some later part of the conversation the evolution for since 1974, the evolution of a community within a unique natural setting like that. So I'll hold a couple of comments about how we've done that as a team approach.
We've got plenty of time. Casey, you've been, I called you a developer on our pre-call, and you're like, we're not developers building, but you are placemaking and building experiences, but right here in Charleston, and against the backdrop of a city that has a history that goes back to the founding of the country. Talk a little bit about how you approach building and placemaking in a city with that much history.
The connotation of developer, which the mayor of Charleston called me recently, and he said, a developer by definition in real estate school is somebody or a group that makes something, a piece of land better or improves it in some way. And so by definition, you're a developer. And but we are a hospitality company. We look at hospitality a little differently. And we have the benefit of just like Tavistock, we're owner operators in the sense that being a part of a family that'll be around for the next 100 plus years, we look at investment and ROI different. And in anything we do, there's a social ROI and then there's the economic ROI, and try to be very intentional about how things manifest and how things come to life. And so I think to the nature of the question, we're here in this wonderful city that's ever evolving with so much history, yet it's at this, we see Charleston as at a really critical point. The evolution of the city, thanks to our wonderful Explore Charleston CVB and tourism and what's happening and new hotels coming into the market, it's been incredible, and more people have moved down here, just like a lot of cities over the last Southeast cities over the last few years. And it's really important that we, as a large organization that's focused on continuing the spirit of Charleston, are involved with decisions and feeling like at the end of the day we're contributing in a positive way to how things come together. And I think at the core of that is about engaging community. And for us, it's I think you guys have mentioned it as well, but it's one of those things that's so easily you kind of roll your eyes, like we're engaging community. At the heart of it, what does that mean? It's interesting. Last night, Union Pier, it's a big development here in Charleston. Last night went through Planning Commission, and despite what anybody might think about the Union Pier plan for PUD approval, what was so amazing was watching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that were, some were pro and some were against the current plan, but who care enough to contribute. And then to see, the head of the Ports Authority who owns the current land listen and take that in and know that, at the end of the day, there is something that we all are contributing, and we have to make sure that we're all participating in a meaningful way to protect the city as a whole. And so I guess part of what we believe in is just making sure that we're sincere about community, we're sincere about long-term investment, we're sincere about social ROI, and that where we can intervene, we do. There is a parcel of land right actually next to us at 141 Meeting Street that we found out it was owned by Dominion Energy, a utility, and it was about to be sold. And our mantra in the office is if not us, who? And if everybody kind of takes that stance when we're walking down the street, there's a piece of trash, or if there's something that's not right, who else is going to do that? And if we all kind of take that idea that it's our duty, it's our job to do that if we have the opportunity. And so, thanks to the guy that I work for, the principal of the family office, said, look, we can't. This is a great opportunity to protect this space and to turn it into a civic park. And so we did it. Now we're exploring, well, as we begin to develop the park, how do we pay homage to Charleston and the good and the bad, and really tell the story that's brought Charleston to where it is today, and look at it 50 years from now. And lastly, I was telling Courtney in our office on the walk over here, there was this wonderful plaque, or this wonderful image that one of our city councilmen watching this planning commission, which is a fascinating exercise I've never really done with the public commons, just watching it. It's unbelievable. It's hours and hours. And at the end of this thing, this guy who was a city councilman years and years ago gets up and he goes, look, there's gonna be a plaque on this property, this parcel, that has your names on it. And 100, 200, 300, 400 years from now, people will look at this, and are you gonna be proud of that? Is it something that, beyond the economics and the politics and all the headaches right now, is it something that you will look at as a sacred duty? And you can say, yes, we did the right thing. And I think that's how we approach things, and I think these guys are in the same boat. And it sounds like, based on Jim's comments, just welcoming the room, which are so beautiful, that's why we're here.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that came up in all of our conversations is that successful placemaking is done on a time scale that's relatively uncommon. Like, you're talking about 50 years down the road, 100 years down the road. All of your developments you're sort of in it for the long term. And I think this is where people rebel against the idea of a developer who's like building something to sell it, flip it, and make money in 5 years. Can you each of you just talk a little bit about how you take the longer view towards development and some of the decisions that you make along the way that short term could be great ideas, but you're making harder decisions so that they pay off on a longer time scale?
I can start with two comments. One is, we are a private company. right? And that's one thing, that we're also a family office, a family-funded company, which means that we don't have a clock that is set by others to what is the right path to follow. And that gives us tremendous freedom, right? We're not worried about making a sale or changing something before the end of a fiscal year or something like that, and then rushing through it, which is a luxury that it really does not exist in a variety of different businesses. It's actually an important one in development when it takes you 18 months to build anything, right? Even if you're the fastest of builders, even if you have a great relationship with Orlando, which is where we are as a city, and you're able to move things through all of the permitting and all of the, kind of like mechanics of building, it still takes you a tremendous amount of time to move dirt and get something out of the ground. So having the ability to have a time frame that's dictated by us and us alone is important. It's an idea of patient capital. The other one, and it's almost at odds with this one, is the other ability that we have, and the reason we can do this long term, is we are able to change quickly. Right? That's the other part. You are starting to build, or you're in a design phase. If something comes, development in the way that people live, or a technology, infrastructure development, we are able to pivot and say, look, this is what we had planned, but it's wrong. Our chairman says that we are 100% guaranteed to be wrong, right? Every time we start. I mean, it's a matter of how we're able to be right for the longest of times, right? We're not going to know exactly everything that's going to happen, but if we have a mindset that actually allows change to be part of the process, we're able to do it. And those two things, even though one's high speed in changing, the other one is this long-term approach, they both work as a way to change the way that timelines actually work in development. And it gives us the ability to have the right things at the right time, as opposed to marching at someone else's drum that may not work with us or with the community, or frankly with the way that the world is shaped. Something like COVID actually allowed people to understand that there's a very different timeline, like the timeline of life, that is there to affect us, and if you were able to adjust during the time, you are able to come out better than if you weren't. And we are very happy that we were able to pivot and to move fast during the time, to continue to build, continue to grow during a time where we needed that type of opportunity.
Juan, just to build upon that, I couldn't agree with you more about, you just never stop learning, or encourage yourself and your team to be open all along the path, which is difficult because you still have responsibilities for execution and performance. And once things are starting to be done, you learn more as a result of that. Make mistakes. I mean, I live in a community that I moved there with my wife, and both of us worked with the original company in 1979. And the strength of that is it's a 10,000 acre studio to witness. The problem with that is all you see are your mistakes. But certain times, certain things work early on that don't necessarily age well. And you can learn from that and share that in the development of other communities. And so the openness of that tactical, strategic part of all our roles in terms of influence on things, keeping an open mind of, commitment, and honor that, execute it, and then assess it. Because in reality, even though all of us are involved in the creation of master plans and developments, that's just the beginning of the community. Actually, the people that live in it extend its life. I mean, Charleston is 350 years old? I think the most recent celebration. Kiowa is coming up on 50 years. We think we've nailed it. I don't think so. But we've shown a path forward of a way of thinking about how to create community. So I agree with you about never stop learning.
Yeah, we share the same perspective as Tavistock, in that we're patient capital, and we're able to create our own timelines and not have to spend through fund at a certain pace. And there's huge value there. However, I think the one thing that we're all touching on is this idea of humility, of plan, of like, what do we know? And if you go into it with that approach, and it's about taking the same humility, perspective, and patience that those that were evolving Charleston 350 years ago and 200 years ago and 150 years ago, it's a really important duty. And when, I think one of the other lessons that we've all learned from COVID through the Great Resignation and all this other stuff that we've all dealt with is that people want meaning and purpose in their life. And so people work for, the people who are at the Planning Commission volunteering their time to get yelled at by, hundreds of people, or the people who we engage with, it's about making sure at the end of the day that all of us are looking at things with purpose and with an end goal in mind that beats an economic return. And doesn't mean there isn't an economic return. It's smart business. You have to. But it doesn't mean that we're going to do it and sacrifice quality of life and what it means to perhaps live in Charleston or all those other elements. And so I think all that comes into play. And I think the last thing is transparency and being open to feedback and comments, which is tough. But we all want the same thing. And so, people who are pro a plan or against a plan or pro something against something, they all want ultimately the macro of this wonderful thing that gives back to the community. They might have different approaches. And if we can take that same spirit of humility and learn along the way, something really special can happen, but it's not going to happen quickly. To your point, it's going to have to be a patient plan that's well thought through.
So you mentioned COVID. It'll probably come up a lot today, how cities are responding, how communities are responding in this new environment. Are there any decisions that you've had to make over post-COVID that have changed the way you think about the design process? Because clearly this wasn't in anybody's designs from the beginning. Now everything has changed. How's that affected your planning process?
For us, I think there are sectors that change completely. I mean, think about retail. Right now, you had because of where we were, you had 100% penetration of online retail, right? Pretty much. You had everyone that had not tried to buy some sort of category remotely tried it during COVID, which means that the way that retail operates shifts offices, right? We have to now completely understand that workforces are fluid. Right? They're not this idea that you are attached to an employer for decades and that's where you make your career and you show up every day for 10 years at the same hour. It's probably not going to be the most resilient way to have a company. And then having spaces that actually allow for that actually make a lot more sense. The idea that caring for children during the time that you're working is also fluid. It's not this like separation of one or the other. So I think we had to learn a lot, and we're continuously learning. I think we have a very different world in some areas. So we had to do that. I think the idea of embracing technology, as we have in Lake Nona, not as a purpose. I mean, a lot of people talk about smart cities. We say that we are a responsive city because we are smart with a purpose, and the purpose is to connect with people and to engage, better with our community and to learn to be able to deploy a better place to be. That's become even more important because we have to now, because of COVID, be able to work in this very fluid environment that we're in. So I think it's changed, like a lot of the fundamental ideas or preconceptions that we had about, work and retail and a few other things. It hasn't changed the fact that, we still are in the world of, moving dirt and building with atoms, not with bits yet, right? And that takes time and you have to go through a planning process, and it's not a simple task once you've decided to break ground. That remains the same, but what you're building is totally different, I think, especially retail and office spaces.
I would like to suggest, too, at least our experience with a community that was largely nature-based. It's all about the outside. Over time, as more facilities were built, excellent facilities, people started to spend a lot more time indoors on these great facilities. But what we discovered were two things. First of all, everyone left cities to come to Kiowa for a long period of time. Now, our facilities were still closed, but they rediscovered what brought them there in the first place, which was outside and nature. And what we started to see evidence of is not only reconnecting with the trail systems and all of what you can access, but the design of homes started to change. The homes started to get far more connected to the outside. Indoor-outdoor relationships were more exaggerated. So I'm not saying that's a path, and that, quite frankly, it should be everywhere. It's not just about a coastal barrier island. It's Union Pier and other places. You can still discover revealing the natural systems that exist in urban areas and find ways to connect more to those. Not under emergency conditions of COVID, but you feel better. You're more communal in terms of other people sharing the same spaces. I don't know if that was an experience that you discovered, but people were forced to go outside and then discovered, this is pretty good, you know? And the other thing is the South Street Partners who are the present stewards of Kiowa for the past 10 years. They've brought progressive thinking about not only extending designing with nature principles, but understanding more the psychology of people living in places like that. Because let me just say it this way, people love the romantic notion of living in nature until they start doing it, then it's creepy and scary.
And they're bugs.
Well, what we learned was parks are far more important because those are safe ways to connect to the natural systems.
I'd say even in New York, I mean, the outdoor spaces post-COVID, first of all, everybody's eating outside. The sidewalks have been taken over, the streets have been taken over, and there's a different city experience on the streets. Not quite, right now they're under a red haze, nobody can go outside. But the air's not as clean as in Kiowa, but
see how connected we are to nature?
That's right.
Thousands of miles away, we're connected, right?
I think that, so Andrew Manshell, who is the current, he's a CEO of Bryant Park Foundation. He came and spoke here recently, and he was talking about just that, like how in Manhattan, Bryant Park, we all know it, it's beautiful, but and I think this kind of goes along with our if not a learning, it's more of it's affirmed our belief that people want moments of connection. And that's really what Bryant Park and others, and exactly what Mark's saying, is that there's this need that people want those moments, and they want it to be, we as placemakers and as people who are in the business of helping people connect, need to be a little bit more thoughtful on creating moments. We have a stadium on Daniel Island, and theaters and parks and hotels and restaurants, and so how do we take that a step further and be thinking about, as this park gets developed on 141 Meeting Street, what are the lessons that we can learn that allow people to come together in a way that people crave right now, especially with all the social media advances and technology advances and beautiful spaces indoors. I think Mark's exactly right. People crave this connection. They might not exactly express it, but our what we've learned is right after COVID, people were wanting to get out and be together in close proximity, and let's create safe, inspiring ways to do that.
Well, we're going to be doing this throughout the day, trying to do just that here at the Mills House. Thank you all so much for coming today. Hopefully we keep this conversation going.